Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about a Star Trek movie, probably the most beloved of all the Star Trek movies, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. This is a movie I've always really enjoyed. I even saw it on the big screen when they re-released it in London. Had an awesome time, by the way. Always have an awesome time rewatching this film. I always wonder, though, if this is actually my favorite or not. I'm rewatching all the Star Trek movies, so we'll find out in just a little while. Next up is going to be Search for Spock, which actually is my favorite. So we'll see. Is Wrath of Khan actually my favorite, or is Search for Spock? There's a few things about this movie that I always thought were a little bit meh. Like, I always thought that what happens with Spock at the end was not very earned. It just kind of came out of nowhere. I was just like, why is this happening now? Like, oh wow, last minute drama. Okay. There was also like the pacing of it, I felt was a little off. I always felt the beginning was a little bit slow. Little nitpicks, but overall, I always really enjoyed this movie. Now, this movie, there's a few changes from the first film. It's directed by Nicholas Meyer, who was kind of a new director at the time. He only directed Time After Time, which I've never seen. So they went with like a seasoned, well-known director, Robert Wise, with the first film. It wasn't really the crowd pleaser they were hoping for, even though that's what Robert Wise was clearly going for with all the fan service with the Enterprise and stuff. But, they decided, what, we need something younger. We need something snappier for this movie. Let's go with this guy. And, all right, new director, kind of a gamble for the studio, but it paid off, critically, the box office, this was a hit. This the freaking Wrath of Khan. It's often seen as the best of those movies. Now, it brings back the whole cast, of course. There's a lot of changes, like, right away from the first film. Like, the visuals are completely different. There's a big emphasis on red, which is why the color red is a big deal in this movie. You gotta have some reds, okay? It's not as abstract and trippy as the first film. There's a very clear villain, Khan, played by Ricardo Montalban, reprising his role from the series, although he looked completely different at that point, but all right. It kind of makes sense. I mean, he's been marooned on a kind of desert planet and turned into a, I don't know, some kind of like weird guy. Weird guy with a long mullet and a team of long mulleted people. Who are not wearing much at all, but they look very 80s. And I mean, as the first Star Trek movie of the 80s, it had to feel very 80s, and it does. Like I said, the reds, the colors pop in this movie, and that's one thing they rectify from the first film. I always like when the sequel learns from the mistakes of the first film. That's always promising. It feels like the people in charge actually figuring shit out, trying to make things better and better. And, my main complaint about the first film is some of the visuals the colors were too drained and too gray. The costumes were not gray. The costumes here are good. They're not like the classic costumes, but it's fine. It kind of works as an upgrade of all these, they're all admirals and shit at this point, so... they're already kind of like presented as like, these guys are old dudes now. This is the old Star Trek crew, okay? But they can still kick some ass. Can they? Will they? Yes, they do. And I mean, obviously, like the story of this involves Khan exacting his long gestating revenge on Captain Kirk. And first, you've got like Chekhov and some other dude show up on this planet. And where they encounter Khan, and there's some like really weird shit where he's like putting freaking bugs in their ears and they become like possessed. This is like classic Star Trek shit. I love that. And like the music in this film is insane. Like whenever like Khan shows up with the ship, is like there's always like this really like high energy. But there's also these kind of like doom, 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 like these beats. Whenever like Khan is like making a big monologue, it's very cold in space. There's so many quotable lines in this movie. This movie is a little bit more, I don't know if it's, yeah, it's definitely more over the top than the motion picture. The motion picture somehow, kind of try to be a little bit more grounded. This movie is just like, nah, this is an action movie. Let's go all out. And yeah, this is an exciting, fun movie. It looks freaking great. The cast is having a great time in this one, especially Kirk, your classic moment. Khan! I mean, the story is good. I really like it. The story of the Genesis planet, which is basically like they want to throw some kind of nuclear bomb on like some dead planet. Boom, life blossoms all of a sudden. And Khan is also kind of after that. So you've got the Khan versus Kirk stuff, but you also have the Genesis plot right there, which does pay off at the end, especially in the search for Spock. And the music's really good, by the way, because it's James Horner. Okay, they got someone like really good for the music in this movie. You also have freaking Kirstie Alley as a Vulcan in this movie, and at first you're like, what? But she's fine. Like, she's pretty good. Like, I don't really. By the end of the movie, I always forget that she's there. Even though she's right there in the movie in front of my eyes, I always forget she's there. So she's not the most memorable character. She's actually even less memorable than the bald chick in the first movie. It's who at least had an interesting look. Kirstie Alley is literally just Kirstie Alley, but she's a Vulcan now. There is kind of like an interesting aspect to that character where she's kind of Spock. She's kind of like an early version of Spock. She's not really a love interest for Kirk, which would be a little bit weird. But there is this kind of interesting dynamic with Kirk and her. It's kind of like you're seeing Kirk. Kirk is kind of looking back in time at like what Spock used to be, But now Spock is like all mature and shit. He's very forward, like at the beginning, about how much he cares about Kirk as a friend. He's just like, he makes these big speeches and stuff. The beginning, it takes a little bit of time to get into this movie. Like, there's a lot of chit-chatting at the beginning. You got a little bit more fan service with the Enterprise. It almost feels like they reused some shots. Wouldn't be surprised if they did from the first movie, because those were some good-ass shots. The effects are cool in this movie. They're very 80s. They almost feel like video games at times. But it kind of works. Like, I love all the space is very colorful in this movie. It's not like the space of the first film, which is like more realistic. There's some weird shapes in there, like V'ger and stuff. But space is space. It's dark. Okay, here nah. There's like weird, colorful red nebulas and shit. No, this movie really aimed to entertain. Not so much like give you, here's Star Trek on the big screen. It's here's Star Trek on the big screen. It's gonna kick your ass. And it does. And you know what? Like, the problem with pacing that I had before, I don't really have this problem anymore. Like, I sat down and watched that movie. Yeah, it's a little slow in the beginning, but once it gets going, once Ricardo Montalban shows up, you're having a great time, like, the whole way through. And the payoff with that character is really good. No, this is a great movie. I don't know what else to tell you. And rewatching it, I'm now thinking it's gonna be a hard one to beat. And I'm almost like second guessing myself, because I haven't seen The Search for Spock, my favorite Star Trek movie, in a very long time. So I wonder if seeing The Search for Spock now is going to be, is it gonna live up to what I remember of it? Like, maybe Search for Spock is not even gonna be close to this movie, because I really enjoyed rewatching this one. I can see why everybody loves it so much. It's so much freaking fun. I mean, they kind of ousted Gene Roddenberry for this movie, which is harsh, really harsh. Like, I don't know if they needed to do that, but I guess they kind of had to, because the first film didn't perform as well as they thought it would. But I mean, come on, just looking at the rushes for this film, the first film, they should have known that it just looked too dark and gloomy. Like, people, when they think Star Trek, they think these colors, like the red, the blue, everything. Like, they go to these planets and everything's like pink and purple and red and green, like that's one of the best parts of the original series, is how colorful it is. And the first film was just like, no, this is space, it's dark up there. Okay, all right, I guess, but it's Star Trek though. And this movie gets that. This movie captured the vibe of the show, but also elevated the original series to something that makes sense on the big screen. You know, this is a movie that if you can see on the big screen, you should definitely go see it. It's really entertaining, and it's funny. It's silly at times, but you know what? It just feels like Star Trek. Like this is, people got excited about this movie. Makes sense. If I'd seen this movie back in the day when it first came out, I would have been like, oh my God, I want more of this, whatever that is, and I think The Search for Spock does provide a lot more of what this movie, does kind of swashbuckling atmosphere that this movie kind of brings to the table. Like the first film went for more of a kind of slow exploration, what the hell is going on out there kind of thing. This movie's just like Khan versus freaking Kirk. Let's go. And then, of course, spoilers, Spock makes this big sacrifice at the end. And that kind of bothered me at the beginning. Like the first couple of times I watched the movie, I was just like, I don't know if it's really earned. I still don't know if they really earned that. They did foreshadow it. Like I said, with Spock makes a couple of speeches at the beginning. He seems to really be saying at the beginning of the movie, I will lay down my life for Kirk. I'll do it. I'm freaking Spock. I love that guy. And he does. And it does kind of come out of nowhere. And they make a big deal of it. But it's a good scene. Like, it's well done. And it just still feels a little unnecessary to me. Like, they really wanted something at the end there. Like a big drama thing. I would have done something maybe with Khan instead. But you know what? It works. Like, it's a good scene. And it is genuinely sad when it happens, And obviously, like Leonard Nimoy, incredible actor. I wish people had given Leonard Nimoy more of a chance as an actor, because he could have played so many different types of roles. Oh my God. And he did, but he never quite managed to get away from just Spock, the character of Spock, which is kind of sad. But yeah, amazing performance he gives in this film. William Shatner is firing on all cylinders in this movie, kicking ass as well. Ricardo Montalban. Honestly, Ricardo Montalban, that's an Oscar-worthy performance. That's a Best Supporting Actor Oscar right there. Best Supporting Actor, Ricardo Montalban, at least a nomination I would have given to him. But you know what? They had to compete. In 1982, they had to compete with Blade Runner. Again, I mean, this movie was more successful than Blade Runner when it came out, but Blade Runner is on another level. I think we can all agree. And Best Supporting Actor in that case would have to go to freaking Rutger Hauer for Roy Batty in that movie. But I digress. Listen, this is a kick-ass movie. You should definitely check it out. Definitely check out the first film first, though. Like, it's a good movie. Don't just skip to the Wrath of Khan. Don't be a douche, okay? Yeah, you got to have some fun with the first film first. Slow exploration movie, different type of thing. This one is an action-adventure. It's like a pirate movie, which is what I love about it, Like, this dude's a pirate. Freaking Khan? Like, yeah, he's like a space pirate. It's awesome. And then you've got some stuff going on with Kirk as well. He's got kind of a little family going on here as kind of a B-plot. They don't really explore that until the next movie. And I think that's why I liked Search for Spock so much, because it kind of built on this movie, and that was kind of the whole idea, is to kind of make this movie kick ass, but set up a few interesting things, little nuggets, little seeds that will grow in the next film. And I think they did an awesome job to make that happen in Search for Spock. So excited to rewatch my favorite Star Trek movie, Search for Spock, and compare it with this one. Like I said, this one's a hard one to beat because it is freaking awesome. It's the Wrath of Khan. What are you going to do? It's a great movie. Check it out. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.